welcome to my studio. I am Lesley Ann Robinson of Knit Graffiti Designs. You can call me Knit Graffiti, just kidding. You can call me Lesley. Welcome. I am so happy to have you here. This is my first official video to kind of introduce myself and talk about my ideas and talk about my designs, and also just to kind of ramble. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kind of a rambler, especially about brioche knitting. I love brioche knitting, if you can't already tell. Primarily my pattern designs are of brioche knitting. Sometimes I venture away from brioche, but actually brioche is what got me into knit design. So kind of a little bit of background about myself. I started publishing my independent knitting patterns in 2015, and it sort of kind of happened very naturally. So before I started designing, I was knitting a lot. I learned how to knit in college, where I received a minor in fiber arts. So my major was in interior design, which I did for many, many years. I worked as an interior designer in Manhattan, and I loved it. I loved being an interior designer. I did mostly commercial work, offices and some retail stores, which were so much fun. And then my husband and I got married and we moved away, and I sort of worked remotely from home, continuing my interior design work. But it just, it was hard. I was a new mom, and as you might know, taking care of children is a full-time job. So I was just knitting here and there for friends and family. And then I started really getting interested in Ravelry and different knitting patterns on there. And I had a knitting group where we met once a week and got to knit together. And that was so much fun. And then one day I was knitting, and my husband, who is a philosopher, he's a philosophy professor, he asked me, he's always asking me questions. He asked me, can you create vertical stripes in knitting? And I was still really new at knitting. I had done some cables and, just like garter stitch and very basic kind of beginner things. So I hadn't really done stranded color work, which obviously you can create vertical stripes with stranded color work. So I was very intrigued though, so I started doing some research on the interwebs, how it goes. And that was in 2014 when two-color brioche was just starting to become really popular and was kind of starting to catch on. With Stephen West was designing with brioche, and of course Nancy Marchant, which I love her. So that Christmas I got this book, Knitting Fresh Brioche. Okay, zoom in. Okay, this book is how I learned two-color brioche. And if you don't have this book and you want to learn more about brioche, I highly, highly recommend adding this to your library. So you can tell I have a lot of areas bookmarked. There's also stitch patterns in here, which is amazing. So, it's just so valuable. You can see where kind of the book kind of wants to open up where I was reading it constantly. So I got this book. I started swatching for one of the projects, the project on the cover, to learn, and that was it. That was it. I was hooked. Seriously hooked. And I started looking for patterns using brioche, and especially two-color brioche, but there really wasn't very much out there, at least not what I was looking for, you know, my own personal styles. So that's how I got started designing. I really wanted, I lived in Michigan at the time, so it was cold, whereas now I live in South Texas where it's not so cold. Like, I'm kind of sweating right now wearing my shawl. It's okay, I'm not really sweating. I don't sweat at all. I'm like one of those weird, no, I'm just kidding. So I designed my first pattern called Pink Graffiti, and I'll show a picture of it here on the screen. But that was sort of the beginning for me. After that, I just wanted to explore different stitch patterns and really just see what does brioche do, and especially with the increases and the decreases. I was so obsessed. I'm still obsessed. I mean, it's been 6 years since I started publishing, and I'm still obsessed. So, you know, if you're new to brioche knitting or you're obsessed like I am, welcome. I love talking about brioche. I love wearing brioche. So what I'm wearing right now, this is my Sizzle Pop shawl, and I'll put a link to it down in the description. So this is my triangle version of the shawl, and it's definitely one of my most popular patterns, and it's definitely more complicated. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a beginner brioche knitter, but there have been a lot of people who have knit it for their first project, which kind of blows my mind a little bit. But yeah, so this pattern actually comes with a triangle version and a square version, which is what I originally knit. I had this idea in my head, and when I finished it, I thought it was going to be a triangle. But when I finished it, it ended up being a square. The shaping is more like a rhombus, like it's shaped kind of like this as you're knitting it, with the increases in the center. So it's a very interesting shape. I think some people have made it as a baby blanket, which is amazing. But then I thought, oh, I want a triangle version. I feel like that's easier to wear. More people like that shape, you know, that shawl shape. So I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out how to take my square, which is basically two triangles next to each other, and I couldn't figure it out, and my husband did, of course. He said, well, why don't you just take this half and just knit, you know, one half of the, I just had to laugh so hard. I'm like, it was that big, oh, like aha, light bulb moment, you know. So yes, so this one is so much fun. It's very repetitive, so if it looks kind of overwhelming, you know, don't get overwhelmed. It's very repetitive, and you know, I really try to write my patterns in a way that a knitter at any level could pick them up and make them. You know, that's really my goal. I want to be very clear, and all of my patterns, especially for increases, you know, patterns with increases and decreases, include written instructions and charts, because, you know, I'm a total chart knitter myself. I design using charts, and then I translate it to the written instructions, but I know that not everybody knits from charts, so that's why I also include written instructions in my patterns. So yes, Sizzle Pop, so fun. I actually, this comes in an ebook, the Pop series, and it comes with Pop Fizzle, which is a hat with the same stitch pattern, and Pop Twizzle, which is a cowl with you know, the stitch pattern is kind of at the border, and then it's even brioche in the middle. That one's called Pop Twizzle because I used infinite twist yarn, so the twist or the twizzle, you know, you get it, right? You get it. Okay, well, there you have some kind of basic background about me. I love being able to share all of this with you, and I have so much planned for Patreon and as well as my YouTube channel, which, you know, it's going to have a lot of free content on it. So yes, I'm so grateful that you are here, and you know, however you support Knit Graffiti, I am so grateful. And I am just very excited, as I've already said. And before I go, I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what's around me right now. So obviously behind me, this is my lovely studio assistant, Dottie, who I named after my grandmother. And she actually, my grandmother, she was such a huge inspiration to me, and she passed away almost right before I started designing, and knitting was a huge way for me to process my grief, and so I'm grateful for knitting in that way. And anyways, so I didn't mean to end this on like a Debbie Downer note, but maybe you can relate. I'm so grateful for knitting for so many reasons. But today, Dottie is modeling my Stelliferous top, which I designed for my birthday, which is on April 30th. So I just had my 40th birthday. And so this uses La Bien-Aimée merino singles. A lot of the sweaters that I design use fingering weight yarn. So I think it's because I like to wear lighter weight sweaters. So that's what you see here. And beside me here is a little bundle of yarn that I've been collecting for years. I mean, years. I think I bought this skein, there's 3 skeins here of So Happy Jane, spelled S-E-W, Happy Jane, so cute. And this colorway is Morning Fog. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's kind of a minty green. So, and then I've been collecting all of this kind of mohair Surrey Cloud. I seem to have lost the tag for this one, but I've been kind of collecting minty colors of fuzzy yarns. So I have something planned with that, but I'm not quite done collecting yarn for it yet. So I'm excited to kind of show you that sneak peek. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and especially if you've watched this far. So yes, I'm going to continue knitting on this is my new shawl pattern that I'm working on, and I showed kind of a sneak peek in my Patreon. If you're a patron, then you've seen it. So I'll talk more about this in my next video. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!